Is Easter pagan? This is Lenny Esposito for Come Reason Ministries. Now, this week, we've been looking at the claims that Easter is somehow a celebration with possibly pagan roots. In my last two videos, I previously talked about how such a claim looks very superficially at the supposed similarities between some of these pagan faiths and ignores the distinctions. I've also discussed how pagan religious rituals would be considered abominable by first century Jews, who make up the adherents of the early church. On this second point, some may argue that it wasn't the Jewish followers of Jesus that incorporated the pagan influences, but it was the Gentiles who did so sometime afterwards. It sounds plausible, but the problem with such a claim is that it ignores the incredible historical evidence we have for the resurrection. You see, unlike many pagan celebrations, such as Mithraic cult rites and these other secretive faiths, we really don't have any written documentation about those at all, save some mentions by outsiders, maybe a little bit of artwork on walls, things like that. There really are no books or scrolls on these secret societies. The resurrection, on the other hand, is incredibly well documented, and its historical roots are strong. So what can we look for as historical documentation of the resurrection accounts? Well, of course, most people are aware that all four Gospels are written with the event as their climax. I mean, it is each Gospel that dates between 30 and 60 years from the time of the resurrection itself. That means the Gospels were being circulated, people were still alive who could testify to the truthfulness of the accounts they contain. There really isn't much time for pagan myths to kind of quote unquote creep into the stories. Suggestions by skeptics such as Heather McDougall that, quote, the Sumerian goddess Inanna or Ishtar was hung naked on a stake and was subsequently resurrected and ascended from the underworld, that these things would somehow influence the resurrection's account of Jesus are really laughable when you consider that, first of all, crucifixion was a real punishment inflicted on the Jews by the Romans in the first century. And we know that for certain. We have archaeological evidence even finding a crucified foot. Secondly, attracting others to your belief system by saying they were crucified was about as attractive as asking a French revolutionary to follow someone beheaded into your own guillotine. I mean, Rome used the crucifixion as a deterrent. It was an abhorrence by the general public. It was scary. No one wanted to be a part of it. And thirdly, the concept of the resurrection wasn't one that people of the ancient world took to immediately. Now, for an example of this, just look to Paul's sermon on Mars Hill. Luke tells us, quote, now when they heard of the resurrection of the dead, some mocked, but others said, well, we will hear you again on this. That's Acts 17:32. That's not what I would call a rousing endorsement of the message. The idea of anyone being resurrected was just as incredible to those in Paul's day as it is to maybe you and me today. Paul had made a pretty strong case to a crowd who he says were very religious in all things. Yet even they mocked the initial notion of a resurrection. Again, this is not an attractive aspect if you are trying to convert Gentiles. However, the earliest documented mention of the resurrection is none of those found in the Gospels. As I've written before, 1 Corinthians 15, 3 through 5, which contains the full creedal basis for the belief in the resurrection, is dated to within a few years of Jesus' death and resurrection itself. Paul even says that there were saints who were eyewitnesses to the resurrection that were still alive, and the Corinthians could go and ask them themselves. Now, there are other signs of the resurrection accounts as historical, but these should be enough to dispel the concept of the resurrection accounts to be corrupted, say, by pagan myths. Tomorrow, we'll finish up this series by touching on some various incongruities of McDougall's claims herself. Until then, I hope you keep thinking. Thank you for watching this Come Reason video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more videos like these, consider subscribing to our Come Reason YouTube channel by clicking on the subscribe button. And you can follow us on social media. Lastly, if you'd like to help keep these kinds of videos free, consider providing a donation by clicking on the donation button beside me. Thank you.